Welcome to Infringe at Your Own Risk.
Hello and welcome back to Infringe at Your Own Risk with Randall Bateman. Rand is a registered patent attorney with decades of experience protecting patents, trademarks, and copyrights for clients from startups to international companies. My name is Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're going to talk about that startup category and how they can protect their intellectual property. Rand, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back. Thank you.
Why is intellectual property particularly important for startups?
Intellectual property gives you a competitive advantage in some level. And if you don't protect that as a startup, it's very easy for an established company to take what you've created and use it against you. The important thing, though, with startups is appreciating that different companies need different IP for intellectual property protection. So, for example, some companies, your trademark is really the only IP you need. I mean, if you're a contractor who just builds houses, that's all you do. Okay, your trademark is your value because you're building your name, and you're able to exclude anybody else from coming in with a very similar name that's going to cause confusion as you build your goodwill in the community. And so the goal of the trademark is that people come to appreciate, Castle Homes is the best builder around. And so your trademark builds value. Okay, that contractor probably doesn't need a patent unless they've invented some new way of building, which some do. But just the regular startup often doesn't need that. They probably don't need copyrights, although if they're doing content online, they probably maybe need a copyright on their website. You would not believe how often people stumble into websites that have been copied almost verbatim from somebody else's website, right? Somebody just got really lazy and, they hired some website company to build them a website who just went and copied somebody else's, slapped in different pictures and thought they'd get away with that. But it's very much your company specific on what you need. Are you built around patents? I mean, there's probably the vast majority of companies never get a single patent. But if you're a tech company, patents are probably the most important to you. I mean, think of the thousands of businesses that there are out there. Restaurant, janitorial services, car dealerships. I mean, just vast majority of businesses are just, they're doing the same kind of thing that other people are. Now, every once in a while, you'll get somebody who does come up with something, right? They've invented a new way of doing something. And the restaurant, they may have invented a new package for like takeout that's really cool that people like. And then maybe they do get a cut. I've worked on some of those, and the car dealership may, in addition to trademarks, they may have come up with some computer software that makes it easier to market that to their customers. So the customers come in for service. So the customers come back and get their buy their next car at that dealership. So they may need a copyright on that, but they didn't need that at their startup phase. So one of the things that I think is important, there's companies that basically kill themselves by getting too much IP at the start. They come in and say, well, we want to do this, and we want to do this, and we want to do the other thing. I'm like, okay, look, if we do all of this, I'm happy to do it for you. Are you going to have money to get your business off the ground? Because if you're just pouring your money into your IP attorney and you can't get a product off the ground, what's the point? You may file 100 trademark applications, but if you never sell a product that uses those trademarks, you wasted your money. I like to, when I'm dealing with startups, I like to sit down with them and talk about what's important to you. What is your advantage? Is it your service? You just give really awesome service. Well, then trademarks are the valuable thing to you. Is it your creative content? The copyrights are important. Is it your new invention that's going to, beat everybody else out, then patents are. But every company needs to go through that analysis and figure out what's the smart spend and what shouldn't I spend right now?
As far as timing goes, when should a startup start thinking about protecting their intellectual property?
The sooner the better. I mean, even if you're not acting on it right away, have that discussion up front with your intellectual property attorney, so you know when you should be doing things. Yeah, maybe you need to file the trademark for your company right now, but your technology isn't quite developed enough to file your provisional application, so you're going to put that off 6 more months. Or maybe it's the exact reverse. Your technology's ready, but you have no idea how the commercialization, so you don't need to pick the name right now, but you do need to file your patent application.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very case-by-case analysis, but the earlier you do it with your attorney, the more you can fit the pieces together as your company builds and build a strong IP portfolio without wasting a bunch of money.
Kind of a common theme a lot of times with startups, at least in my experience. I've known a lot of startup founders over the years, and a lot of times they're so good at their product, they're so good at that stuff, but there's other areas of the business that it's just they're just not just not their area of expertise, right? So what do you find are some of the more common mistakes new businesses and new startups make as it pertains to intellectual property?
Okay, so the most common mistakes I see with new business owners, with respect to trademarks, number one, not doing a search. If the trademark's important to your company, you don't want to adopt it, start using it, and then get a cease and desist letter from somebody else because you're infringing their mark. You've poured all your effort and your money into getting your name out there, and then you have to change your name. So
is that just lack of knowledge, Rand? I mean, that seems kind of crazy, I think, to the average person. Like, how would you not make sure no one's using that name?
Happens all the time.
Wow.
All the time. And especially you're in the industry maybe here, in your state, but it's somebody in another state who has it. The worst is if it's a registered trademark, right? Because then there's kind of no excuse. It's, you go to the USPTO website, type in the name, and it should pop up. But there's also people who have common law rights that are ahead of you. I had this years ago where I had a client that had been using their mark 40 years, and we went to register it, and somebody else had registered a really similar name. And we had a hard time, even though we predated them by 20 years, we had a really hard time because they had this registration. So do your search first. It doesn't take that long. It doesn't cost that much money. With copyrights, very common mistake. If you have anybody who creates things for you, somebody else wrote your software, especially outward facing things like that you're going to sell. If you had somebody draw caricatures that you use on your product line, if you sell designs of something, make sure that you have either a license or ownership of those designs, because you do it, you're excited, you go and your product takes off. Guess what? The artist who drew that caricature that's on all of your products says, I didn't authorize you to use it that way. I want X% of your business. Mm-hmm. And you're stuck because they actually own the copyright if it was done outside. If you don't have an agreement that explains I have these licensing rights or I have an assignment of the copyright. So anything that's made by outside people, get an agreement that protects you. With patents, the biggest mistake that I see is people who have started selling a product and don't think about patenting it until a couple of years later, and it's too late. You have 1 year in the United States from first releasing a product or public display or disclosure of the products to file your patent application. I get all the time. I get calls from people, hey, we've got this product. It's selling really well. We want to get a patent on it. And then I find out they started selling it 2 years ago. It's like, well, you could have gotten a patent on it, but you can't anymore. That's hard. Hard when, especially when somebody's doing really well and then enough that competitors are now noticing and like need to copy their product. You have to tell them, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. You've put it in the public domain now. So those are the most common. With trade secrets, it's just, what have you done to protect what you claim is secret? Have you limited who knows about it, limited access to it? Those are the most common mistakes that small businesses make when they're starting out.
You mentioned the using a contractor. I think you used an artist as your example. Obviously, also a lot of startups have more than one founder. You got co-founders. What is the right way to handle IP ownership when working with co-founders, or like in the example you gave with a contractor?
Okay, so this is another really important thing. Assign your IP to the company and have a good business agreement drawn up for your company that deals with what happens when people don't get along.
Mm-hmm.
You get into a company and two of the partners want to do one thing and the other partner wants to do another thing. Well, companies, when you set up a company, if you got a decent attorney doing it, they will address those issues with you, so you know how it's being handled. IP, if it's not assigned to the company, is treated differently. So, for example, if two people invent a patent, either person can license it to anybody. Okay, well, that kind of takes away the advantage of a patent, right? Because if you license it to me and he licenses it to the competitor, okay, it's not giving either of us an advantage now because our competitor can do the same thing we can.
Right.
So, if you assign it to the company, then the company decides who it gets licensed to or how it's used. The same thing with copyrights. You want to control who can exploit them and whatnot. And often it may not be best to hold it in the company's name. For example, if you're in a company that you have risk associated with the company, right? If you're a company that builds freeway overpasses, and you've invented a new load-bearing beam that will make this much easier, but there's a risk if something goes wrong, your company's going to get sued. So sometimes what you'll do is you'll set up a holding company. All of the IP in the holding company licenses it to your working company, right? But then if the working company gets sued, people can't just grab the patents because they're owned by the holding company. So there's issues like that to think through. Hire a good business attorney. I mean, I know that it's cheap to get your business set up online, and they do great documents. But the problem is, a good attorney knows which document you need for your situation, as opposed to, well, this is a really good contract. Well, it's a good contract, but just not for you in the condition that you're in. This other contract will be better. And you need somebody advising you so you don't sign contracts that hurt you. I've had clients sign NDAs that were completely lopsided in favor of the party that they disclosed the technology to. Basically said they can run away with the technology and do whatever they want. That didn't help.
Don't sign stuff without getting a second pair of eyes on it, an attorney's eyes on it, preferably.
Attorney, we're not cheap, but we're cheaper than the alternative. And if something ends up,
right,
that $1,000 or whatever you saved by not consulting an attorney a year ago will become $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 in attorney's fees.
It's going to look like peanuts. Yeah.
Yep.
So, another thing that a lot of startups have is investors. How can startups protect confidential information when talking to investors, and what should the startup sort of have resolved before even talking to outside investment, just so that they can ensure they're protecting themselves?
Yeah, if you can get an NDA signed in advance, there's a lot of VCs and whatnot who just won't sign NDAs because they're doing so many deals. You have to basically go in on trust with them, then find out how trustworthy they are. Because there are some who are sharks who will just steal it. And there's others who are very honorable and they won't. But if you can get an NDA, get it, have it reviewed. If you can't get an NDA, just make sure to preserve the secret sauce. You know, we're doing X, but you don't tell them exactly how you're doing X. So they don't have that information where they can instantly turn around and start up a competing company. So it's the tightrope when you're dealing with investors, because you want the money, obviously, but it can hurt you a lot more. Sometimes you get the money, but if you disclose it to the wrong person and they disclose it, it's not worth the investment.
Yeah, a lot of times they need the money, and to our point earlier, like they're not, a lot of times the startup founders, they're not savvy in these other areas of business, and they just get excited. They're like, oh, if this company wants to give me X amount of dollars, sweet, let's do it, without thinking through the consequences of what could happen.
Yeah, if you're gonna be doing startup companies that tend to be IP focused, try and find a couple good angel investors, who are known in the area as being good investors. A lot of times they will know what to watch out and what to avoid. And if they're invested in your company, then it's in their benefit to avoid, there's venture capitalists and there's vulture capitalists. And the key is avoiding the vulture capitalists, and a good venture capitalist can make you hundreds of millions of dollars because they can put in the money. They know the right people. They do all those things. A bad one can destroy your business, walk away with everything you worked for it.
Yeah.
Leave you standing with the mess.
Mm-hmm.
So, but get to know your investment community, because people in the industry will know, and there are people who have good reputations and people who have bad reputations.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to other people. The bad ones usually are not, they're not flying under the radar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not for very
long, at least. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for tuning into today's episode of Infringe at Your Own Risk. If you're building something big, don't leave your ideas unprotected. Visit batemanip.com to connect with Rand and his team. And don't forget to leave us a review, subscribe to our channel. We greatly appreciate it. Rand, always great chatting with you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.